Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
We're so pleased to welcome you back to part two of a two-part series addressing peace in our hearts, homes, neighborhoods, nation, and world. The organization that's put this theme together in our community is Diakonia, who just do wonderful work. And last week we had three of the members to talk about the organization and some of the things they've done in the past. We have three other members of that organization with us today to talk about some of the future activities, and certainly we may also refer back to some things that have been done. First of all, I welcome to the program Reverend Marilyn Muehlbach. She is the pastor of the Unity Church of North Idaho. So welcome to our program. Worked with you a long time, and we admire all the work that you do.
Thank you.
And secondly, we'd like to welcome Reverend Mike Bullard. He is the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church in Coeur d'Alene, and he too has been so instrumental in a lot of things that we've been involved in, and we so admire what you do, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks.
And our third guest is a colleague over the years at North Idaho College and a great friend, Chris Wold. She is the co-founder of Diakonia. About 8 years ago, or next month it will be. We're airing this in January, and we thank you so much for all you've done and admire your work. And she also is active in the Lutheran Church of the Master in Coeur d'Alene. With that, we also welcome Erna Reinhardt, our regular panelist, and Erna will commence today's questioning.
Welcome to the program, all three of you. It's great to have you here today to talk about a wonderful organization that we have in our community. Chris, as one of the co-founders of Diakonia, tell us a little bit about what that organization is and what prompted you to get involved in starting it.
Well, Lidwin Durney and I have been friends for a number of years, and when welfare reform was taking place, about 8-9 years ago, in discussions and reading different articles, specifically one that I read from a Seattle paper saying who was going to pick up the slack in welfare reform, that people would be without services and that there were many needs that wouldn't be met. Lidwin and I decided that maybe in our community some of the churches could meet those needs. And so we asked some friends, and some friends asked their respective pastors to come together. And we just talked and visited and decided that this was something that the community could benefit from. And some of the founding members were Father Roger LaChance from St. Pius, Reverend Bob Hasseries from St. Luke's Episcopal Church, and Reverend Kurt Wandry. Mike Bullard was in on the ground floor of that, and Lidwin and myself. And since then, it's just grown and flourished.
And I want to go to Mike. I want to ask you, both you and Marilyn, the same question. What do you see as a benefit to you as the leader of your church? What benefit do you get out of this organization, and also what benefit does the community get out of it by having it here?
Well, my personal benefit, to be real frank, is that these are friends that I enjoy. And I think that by working with people of other faiths in our conversation, I think that sometimes it helps me understand my own faith more, to see it in contrast with others. And I think then to come together, it affirms the fact that we have these human bonds. Human beings, we care, we really can do some things together. We're part of the same community.
Marilyn, I didn't ask that question very well. What I really meant was, why is this organization so important? That's a little bit better.
Well, when I became a part of Diakonia, it was as an avenue through which our church could become more involved in the community with other churches. We're a fairly small church, and to be able to work with other churches to do things that would benefit the community was very important to me. I also enjoy the being with colleagues and talking about the issues that we find are the same from one church to the next, to the next, to the next. Even though our beliefs are somewhat different, we can respect that with each other, but some of the problems that we face are very much the same.
Excellent.
I want to get right into the heart of something that's going to be happening. And one of the purposes of inviting you on this program, there were several, but one was that in February, which is not far off, you're doing a 4-week series. I think I misspoke last week and indicated it was like 3 months, and it's certainly the manuals you have in the books. You could do it over a longer period of time, but you've been able to put it in a 4-week series, the workshops. And I believe the particular book you're using is called From Violence to Wholeness, and that's it there. And so, Marilyn, if you would take us through what some of the goals are of the workshop, and it's going to be open to the general public. But before we give them a number a little bit later of how they can become involved, I think they'll be very interested in hearing you tell about what all you're going to do.
Well, this is really an experience and immersion in nonviolence. We did start out with thinking it was going to be a 3-month program, but we decided we couldn't get people to come over that long a period of time, coming every week. So we've condensed it down into a 4-week program. We're going to start with kind of an overview of the experience and the dynamics of violence, and how even though we think we live in a peaceful community, and by and large we do, and yet things like bullying in the schools, that's about violence. Domestic violence is certainly about violence, and that's a part of our community. Gangs, which we work to keep out of our community, are also a form of violence. There's a lot of violence in our lives these days, in addition to the violence we see in the world. So we'll start with this overview and seeing how we connect in with that. And the second week we're going to be focusing on violence and nonviolence and gender and how that plays in. The following week we'll be looking at social change and how we can use nonviolent techniques for social change, and how other people have, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., among others. And then the final week, what we're hoping to do is bring that into our community. How do we make a difference in our own community as far as nonviolence goes? So that's kind of the format.
Sure, that's very interesting. And then each week, how long is the session, the workshop?
No more than 2 hours. We'll be bringing in speakers from our greater community, speakers on these various topics, some from Coeur d'Alene, some from Spokane. And then we're hoping to have some interactive activities as well, activities where people can actually get involved in practicing techniques that will maybe help shift the way they interact with the rest of the community.
So in addition to speakers, I call those in the academic world, simulations, where you have some role playing, and that technique can be very, very powerful. Reverend Bullard, would you like to elaborate upon why this kind of training, not only for the people who belong to your organization, but for people in the community in general, can, I would suggest, maybe empower people to have better ways of supporting one another and finding peaceful resolution of conflict?
Yeah, I think really there's two things about this that are very important to me, and one is that as we look at events in the world, and as we see the things that are happening in the news, we live in a world where there's a lot of violence and war and fighting, and it's hard for us not to be drawn in to become, so that our own reactions become unnecessarily violent, and so that the things that are in our heart are peaceful. And so to me, one important aspect of this is how do we maintain a peaceful character and a peaceful attitude toward others in a time when there is so much violence in the world. And the other aspect of it is to learn that nonviolence is an effective technique. It's not just about being nice and sweet and letting people run over you and just ignoring things. It really is a very effective technique that Gandhi used to change a nation, that Martin Luther King used to change a nation, and that when it's used effectively with techniques, there's a lot to it. There's a science to it, and used that way, it's a way to resolve conflict and to accomplish great change and movement in society in an effective and lasting way. So
it's not apathetic or sitting on the sidelines. But it's a very direct way of helping bring change.
Right.
Before I go to Chris, I have a question for her, but I think our viewers, some of them are very interested in the possibility of attending this. So we always like to provide, whatever our subject is, a way for people to get in touch with our guests. So it's my understanding that if someone wants to join in this 4-week workshop, they should do so, Reverend Bullard, by calling the First Presbyterian Church here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And let's give them that number, please, and including the area code.
Okay. 208-667-8446.
In case someone, I'm always thinking of my viewers out there, they're so precious to us. Someone's running to get a pen and a little pad, and so I'm going to repeat it now, and it's up on the screen too for those who are watching the TV. It's 208-667-8446, and also it's in the telephone directory under the First Presbyterian Church. With that, Chris, let me turn to you, and again congratulate you, because as one of the mothers of this organization, there's a neat lady that we call the mother of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, Dina Tanner. She was the founder. Nothing better than mothers creating and nurturing. It's wonderful. And so you are, along with another wonderful person, the co-founder. As it relates to this particular project, you've had many others, but how, or what would you say about why such workshops could be so helpful to those who wish to come? What will they get out of it?
Well, I think that we really need to accept the fact that there is a lot of violence in our community in many little ways. Many years ago, there was no such term as road rage. And I think if any of us have even driven on a freeway or driven to Spokane, we've probably been subjected to that. So we deal with some kind of violence, in our community and in our lives. And we would hope that people would learn some new skills and also be able to go and work with other groups and help them to discuss some of the issues of violence and some of the ways that we can change attitudes and not be so reactive, but be proactive as we see different kinds of violence coming into our community.
Based on what you just said, it dawned on me that one particular group of people that would be very much empowered by your workshops would be educators, particularly those who are in K through 12. A lot of those techniques, and they have other programs they do too, but that they could take a lot of those back to the classroom, because we have a lot of great educators who are working on such things as bullying and so. But they, at each different thing they go to, they get some new techniques.
And we would hope that that some of the things would be particularly helpful for the spiritual community, for churches and lay workers who work with youth groups and families within their own faith community, to help them see maybe some of the things that are going on and how things could be changed.
Thank you. Erna Reinhardt.
Marilyn, I'm interested in where this program came from and a little bit maybe about who is behind it, who wrote that book, and where has it been used, and how did you guys find it?
Well, ever since 9/11, we've at Diakonia meetings, the issues of violence and nonviolence would come up, and we kept thinking we ought to be doing something. We should be doing something, and we looked at, should we be bringing in speakers? What can we do that would help our community at this time? And Richard Terry brought this book to one of the meetings and said that a friend of his had been using it and was involved with it, and he thought it might be something we were interested in. And at the same time, when he brought it to the meeting, I recognized the book. A friend of mine in Billings had sent me a copy of the book and said that they were using it in Billings as a community-wide program and that it was very effective there. So we began to look into it from that point and began to talk about how we could use that book in our community in a way that would impact more people than those that were sitting around the table at Diakonia.
Excellent. And Mike, I'm interested in one of the workshops will address the issue of gender, and I know that males and females deal with anger and deal with violence in different ways. Can you tell us a little bit about what that section may be on and what people may be able to garner out of that session?
Well, one of the resource people we've talked about is the new executive director of the Women's Center. and I'm on the board of that organization. And there is indeed a lot of violence in homes in our community, and a lot of things that can spawn and lead to violence, and sometimes understanding of those issues can help solve many problems before they happen. So I think the opportunity to do some education about conflict resolution and understanding our own feelings is an important part of learning a peaceful heart.
And Chris, we touched on this a little bit already, but tell us who, besides K through 12 educators, who would benefit from this kind of a program?
Well, we would think that anyone would. I know
I myself personally am looking forward to it, and I think that anyone who has interests in community building and in helping their own faith group or families would want to participate and could learn a lot.
You have room for how many people to attend?
Well, if we're full, we'll move to a bigger venue.
Perfect.
We're
open.
Yes.
Excellent.
That's the spirit
That
of this
wouldn't be
organization.
that would not be a problem. We've done that in Diakonia at some of our meetings where we've had so many people attend that we had to move from one room to the gym or the different room at St. Pius, and it's never been a concern.
Perfect.
I just have to say at this point that one way to describe your organization is inclusive.
Yes.
You're not an exclusive
No.
organization. That's
No.
one of your great strengths. Chris, I want to go back a little bit to last week. Your dear friend that was on the program last week read an incredible statement when you did this wonderful program to combat hate. And I know you were spearheading that, and I was so taken by the fact that you got so many people to sign a pledge that appeared in both newspapers. So would you take it from there and tell us how this project, and it was very powerful for this community, and there's a lot of comfort that to people in the community that may face some kind of discrimination when they get comfort from the fact that people respond. Billings, Montana is such a beautiful example. You mentioned Billings some years ago when there was hate in their community. The way they responded on behalf of the victims was very powerful to say to the individuals engaged in hate, no, it will not go over in our community. So you had a lot to do with that. Would you share that?
Well, we've really struggled over the years with what an appropriate response is to something like the Aryan Nations, to hate groups. And we've talked and prayed quite a bit about different things to do. And at this time, we just came up with the idea, how about having people sign their names to a big petition type scroll that would appear in the newspaper. And we really weren't sure what the response would be. And Mike worked on that, and several of us, and we sent out papers to the different churches and community groups, and we had no money to pay for the newspaper ads because we have no dues or anything like that.
But you had faith.
We had faith, and it was just a wonderful thing because people started calling and sending us signatures. We had not only citizens but leaders of some of the different faith groups in the area also signed on, and I think Mike has the exact number of signatures that we had, and also the donations came in to just cover the costs of the newspaper ads. So it was one of those real miracles in a lot of ways. And when you looked at the ad, and I still have a copy at home, and you see all the names of people all across the community represented who wanted to say this is not acceptable in our community and this is an appropriate way to respond, it really, I think, pulled people together.
Mike, I did before the program, I know we talked about there was a large number. You got this done in about 2 weeks, I believe.
Yes.
In 2 weeks, we got 1,660 names of people who wanted their names publicly attached to that ad. And the money we raised bought 2 full-page ads, one in each of our local newspapers. And when you think that the parade involved a very small number of local residents, by comparison, we had 1,600 who wanted to say to the public that that you cannot call hatred a Christian thing.
Marilyn, last week too we talked about some events you had, and one of your powerful events was celebrating all of these faiths in the Coeur d'Alene City Park. And could you elaborate a little bit? I know there were speakers and music, but also didn't you have a large turnout for that too? In other words, the different communities within our community have, on many occasions, when called to action, done so in your organization, also in the human rights organization. So would you share a little more about what you think that did for the community?
Well, that particular event, I think, brought awareness, among other things, and it was a beautiful day. And I think for me, what the important part of that was realizing how many different people in the community, how many different organizations really did care about making this community an open and safe place for people to live. We've come together in all of our rich variety other times as well. A prayer service after 9/11 happened, a community prayer service. We began this event with a prayer service this past October.
The one you're having in February.
Yes, as kind of a precursor to that, where many different denominations participated, and that was a beautiful, powerful service also. The choir from the Church of the Master sang, and they sang some beautiful music. We've had a lot of just times of coming together when there was a need and finding out how we could meet that need or help out with that need in our community.
Thank you. Erna Reinhardt.
This is a little off topic, but since we have you on the program, I'm curious what your thoughts are. With the war in Iraq and trouble spots throughout our world, lots of times religion is at the base of some of those conflicts. And I'm curious how the two of you, who are so strong promoters of peace, how do you wrestle with that? What are your thoughts on that?
For me, I think that the more we learn and understand about the individual beliefs, both our own and other beliefs, the more informed we are. As a student of the Bible, I'm in touch with people in archaeology and with the long-standing Christian communities in the Middle East, and we often forget that they're there. The media doesn't notice them. But I feel that the more we could understand of the history of the area and of the people, we sometimes get into conflicts supporting what we think is our religious belief and don't realize that we're supporting only one part of it, and at the base there's something else that when we understand the real basis of each belief, that's when we have the most understanding from which to formulate solutions.
Marilyn, your thoughts?
I too think education is extremely important. After 9/11, we had a series where we invited people from other religions to come and speak. We had a Muslim, we had a Buddhist, we had someone from the yoga community, we had, I can't even remember, we had about 10 different evenings, and we asked them to come and give a short talk about their religion, and then to field questions, and then to lead us in an experience, a worship experience in their tradition. And it was rich and interesting, and we had a number of people from the community as well as from our church. And what I saw in that was that there are things in each of us, in each of the religions, that are very similar. Certainly similar desires and similar hopes and dreams. But there are also things that are very different from one religion to another. And for each of those religions that were represented and the representatives that spoke about them, their religion seemed to be right for them. And it also led me to the place of realizing that mine was right for me. And I think that happened for a number of people. There's a reason and a richness in the discovery of the variety that's out there for all of us. I think we get carried away when we think that ours is the only way or the right way and everybody else's is wrong.
Your answers are powerful. And Chris, let's follow up with you.
Yeah.
You bet.
I think diaconia is a perfect example of people with very different religious backgrounds coming together, sharing faith, but saying that there are things that we can do together to serve in the community. And so I think it is really a great example of setting aside differences to come together as one.
I'd like to follow up on that. I'll do it with you, Chris. I remember having a conversation with a very fine student at our college, deeply religious in his faith, and in our discussion, and he was young, so he has maybe some other ways of dealing with as he grows in this process. But what he was having trouble with is how can you be so committed and dedicated to your faith and yet appreciate and celebrate people that have found a different path. Doesn't your organization do that? You said here today that you can stay faithful to what you have. In about 30 seconds, could you add to what he was doing?
Well, I think your statement is very true, that each of us that do participate do have a very deep-rooted faith in our own faith tradition, but we're also friends. And I have a variety of friends from all walks of life, of colors and interests, and that's what makes life rich. I would feel very sad if I only had friends who were like me.
So the point I was trying to get across, I think that you have done so well, is that you can be true to your faith and still have this wonderful ecumenical meeting of minds on things that are common to all the human race. With that, I bring to a close our program. On behalf of Werner Reinhardt and our staff, we thank all three of you for being with us today and all the work you're doing, as we did the guests last week. I would just suggest that we're a much more enriched community because of you. And good luck in your work. Ladies and gentlemen, please be with us again next week, and we'll turn to yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.